Alberto here. Some of you know me as Bertie. I'm the psychiatrist and visionary at Relational Minds. Those who've been following us on our socials know that this year we've embarked on a bit of a challenge to travel through the country and understand the needs and wants of families and children. Um, what we're excited, or what I'm excited to announce today, is that we really want to meet that need, and we've collated all the information and data that we've collected, and all the relationships and feedback that we've received. And what we're going to do is release a series of videos through the year. We're going to aim to release a video once a week aimed at educating parents and supporting parents. So if you have any burning questions or areas that you'd like covered, please feel free to reach out to us on our socials. But we are really hoping to provide information for parents to help support their children who might be struggling with their mental health, build stronger relationships, and help their children grow emotionally. So we're really excited about it. We hope you find it helpful. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on socials, mainly through Facebook, and subscribe to our newsletter where we will provide a bit more in-depth information. And again, we are looking to connect to parents and families. So if there's anything that you need or anything that you'd like us to cover, please let us know. So let's get straight to it. Those of you who've heard me speak or have worked with us, you'll know some of this. Some of you won't have known about it or explained it in this way. It's a very basic concept where what we assume for all children is that every behavior they do or everything that they're doing, they are doing their best. And they are performing to the best of their capacity to manage the situation that they're in. And that comes back down to the brain that they have. Right? So, and that might include the genetics that they've inherited, the environment that they were exposed to in the womb, and the environment that they were exposed to in the first few years of their life. So let's work on understanding that in this brief video to really truly understand what is going on for your child. And what I encourage you to do is with this information is be able to stop and wonder what is going on in your child's brain and what are they coping with and which part of their brain they're using. So what we'll do, we'll start off with an understanding that our brain functions on three levels. So, those of you who've heard me speak, you will have heard me describe this before, that our brain functions at its most basic level from the bottom, which is our brainstem, which basically just keeps our body alive, right? Maintains a homeostasis, maintains temperature, maintains our organs. And then some people might describe this as a reptilian function or something that we share with reptiles. The next level high right with our brain is our emotional brain. Some people will know this as the limbic region or limbic system. And this seems to be a part of our brain that we share with mammals. Now, what does our emotional system do for us? What it does is it keeps us alive. It maintains our safety. It causes us to be anxious about danger. So those fight, flight, freeze, appease, or fight, flight, freeze, fawn type responses, that's where this comes from, right? And it's important to note that this portion of our brain, the middle part of our brain, the emotional part of our brain, seems to be already there when we're born as a baby. Right? That's relatively well formed. And then what we have to do as we grow older as a human being is to grow the other sections of our brain. And some of us will say that these other areas of our brain that grow later is what separates us from other mammals, right? These and the star of the show, so to speak, is our frontal lobe, which is our executive brain, or what we call where the seat of our executive function is. And this is personality, impulse control, strategy, planning. It's a really sort of smart part of our brain that has to integrate the other parts. Right? So this is probably an important point that one of the roles of the frontal lobe is to integrate information and function from other parts of our brain. Now, so basically, depending on what's happening for us in our stages of development, we are we can move through those levels. So some of us will describe that when you're really young, you're really just functioning from an emotional state, and we're really not that different to other mammals, like a dog, for example, where we just react to emotions. It's not until we get older that we're able to reflect, we're able to make decisions, strategize, and plan. There's a picture that we've got up here, and one of the parts of that picture that I really want to highlight is that the first 5 years of our development or our growth is actually super important. There's back in the day, we used to think that, that babies and infants and toddlers really didn't really seem to know much or absorb very much until they develop language and talk to them or they could speak to us. But that's not true. That they actually absorb a lot, and in fact, that the early development of their brain becomes the foundation that they have to build on and grow the rest of their brain, and it affects the rest of their function for the rest of their life. So if there's one thing that we should be fighting for, it's supporting new mums, supporting pregnant mums or pregnant ladies who need support to help grow a child. So that's a really important point. Now, if we progress that further, if we dive a bit deeper into those areas of brain function, what we see is that we've now got a reasonably good understanding that there are certain areas of our frontal lobe that has to connect to different areas of our brain. So, for example, the deeper sections of our frontal lobe, we think that's related to emotional regulation, so regulating anger or happiness or anxiety. And that needs to connect to that limbic region to provide that control or provide that regulation. The other part is the top parts of our frontal lobe seem to be related more to that executive function, so that attention, focus, planning, impulse control, and strategy. We think that top part of our frontal lobe is one of the last to develop. So that we don't really expect kids to have as much impulse control until they're a little bit older, maybe 8 or 10. And then we hope that they carry that into adolescence and in adulthood. So, and again, what I wanted to highlight in this part is that we now have an understanding that stress levels, or what we call arousal levels, seem to affect which part of our brain is functioning at any one time. And what we now know is that there seems to be, whether it's an anomaly or it's probably not that helpful way of our brain reacting, is that when we get really stressed and move into this fight, flight, freeze, or dissociation type responses, our frontal lobe seems to switch off. And that seems to be something that happens. And it kind of makes sense that our brain would go back to its mammalian state. Some people will say that if you get really stressed enough, you go back to your reptilian state and you really just curl up into a ball and you're not even functioning at all from an emotional level. So what this means is that if in your development, or as you're growing up, especially in those first 5 years of life, if your areas of your brain that are meant to be more logical are switching off all the time, then the development of those sections is going to get delayed. Right? So, there are other factors that are involved, though. Like, for example, if you have, if you inherit a brain system through your family where the development or the speed of growth of brain cells or brain connections isn't efficient, then you're going to have a problem from the beginning. And then on top of that, if you're unlucky enough to have a perfect storm where you also experience lots of scary or traumatic experiences that raise your arousal, then you're going to have lots of episodes repeatedly where those logical systems in your brain will switch off. And so then the development of those, the growth of those will slow down. Why is that? Because we also know that that our brain uses a use it or lose it principle. So the more parts of your brain that you use, those sections will get reinforced. Right? Brain cells that fire together, wire together. Whereas if those parts of your brain are not being used as well, then the development or the reinforcement is not going to be as strong. And in later sections, we'll talk about adolescence, where that again, your brain actually goes through sort of a fine-tuning process in terms of working out which parts of your brain it needs or not. So this, it's worth thinking about which areas of our brain our children are functioning from, because if they are functioning from the logical state, then you can talk to them. We can reflection. We can argue even, or we can educate. But if they're functioning at a lower level, they're not going to be able to receive that information, not going to be able to engage with you at that level. So one of the ways I might suggest to you is a child or your child or adolescent who's got a good working frontal lobe, you might be able to have a conversation with and say, what could you have done better in that situation? Whereas if that adolescent, even if they're 16 or 15, is so stressed or shamed, for example, that's a concept we might talk about another time. But if the arousal levels are high and the logical systems are switched off and they're only functioning from their emotional state, what you'll find is that they act more like a toddler or a younger child. So the way you have to relate to them and connect to them has to be appropriate to that level of brain function, right? So because otherwise they're just going to say you don't understand, and you're going to get frustrated because the things you're trying to do isn't connecting. So it's useful to think about which level of brain function my child is functioning at right now, and that's the level where I need to approach them with. Um, if your child is functioning at the emotional state, you will find that if you can soothe them and you can help them, you will find that you might then open up the capacity of those logical systems so that down the track you can have more conversation. And it's just sort of dance where you can move up and down dependent on their stress levels or arousal levels. Because what this chart shows here is that when their arousal levels are low, they can engage, they can take risks, they can engage socially even, they can learn new things or see new people. Whereas as the arousal levels start to rise, then what you'll find is they'll get more defensive. And if it gets really high, then they'll curl up into a ball and need to avoid or run away or fight. And so what the image here is showing us is that that when that frontal lobe switches off or the logical systems switch off, then the part of your brain that's really active is that limbic region, that emotional region. And there's another picture there that highlights Broca's area. And that's important to highlight in adolescents or verbal kids is that when that's an area that also switches off when they're stressed, because that's part of that's near your frontal lobe. So what happens there is that your child who has verbal skills, when that section switches off, they lose those skills. So it's not that they don't want to tell you something, or it's not that they don't have anything to say, but more that they won't have the capacity to, because that part of their brain has switched off. So finally, let's think about this. Now, next time you see a behavior in your child, it doesn't have to be a negative behavior. Think about what's going on in your brain, right? Especially if you're watching your child manage stress. Right? Are they able to stay in that frontal or logical region to reflect or work out what the best things to do? Or do they move to that phase where they're just afraid? I've been ignored. Okay. And hopefully they don't get to an even lower level where they really don't bear attention at all. And then know which stage they're functioning at and adjust your approach based on it. So, okay, hopefully you find this helpful. This is a really useful and core part of understanding our children, and a lot of conversations moving forward will build on this. So thank you for giving me the time and your attention, and I look forward to connecting with you in any way.